Okay, hey, so my name is Mike, and what I'm going to do is this. This is a project, a woodworking project, okay? And then there's all these different locations that, from a different view, that have what I would call cavities. These are things, holes, basically holes, that allow people, me and other people, to do things as far as with using this workbench for vices, for mounting drill presses, for everything else. There's also a number of holes that are used for building the actual box itself. So there's some screws that hold everything together. There's some uh, tenon, or excuse me, some tenons and so on, or mortises rather, and dados. So what I do is I take and I made one single template. It's the same template to do a whole bunch of different functions. It just depends on how you mount it. So this one's mounted one way. You can see the blue line right here, which is a dado. There's a blue line here, and when you mount them that way, you're able to do different things on different boards. But again, it's all the same template. So this, I'm going to jump over to what I have. I have a separate tab set up for CNC. So these are all the different CNCs, and if I were to zoom out right now, there should be nothing else. There's nothing else on the entire model, the entire SketchUp model, because this is a group. You can see I've got it grouped in, and then I've hidden everything else, created a scene that takes you right to this. Now, so what I'm going to do though is I keep all of my CNC templates or CNC runs basically in the same group. Now, when I'm going to transfer that over to Vcarve, I can't have this and this and this come in because there's something else. So what I do is I go inside the group and I'm going to select, so control click, control click, control click, control click. I'm going to right click on those and I'm going to hide them. All the dimensions and the words and everything else, they can remain the same. But so now what I've got is really just this one single template that I want to I want to bring that into Vcarve, and then I want to set up all the holes. Now if you look at, speaking of holes, if you notice that these certain holes, most of them have a kind of a reddish color or orangish color on the inside, maroon. One of them has a blue, and then there's a little bit of green. Well, that kind of reminds me of what I want to do. So basically all of those with a reddish color, which is not going to show up in Vcarve, but I can constantly refer back to here in case I have a question to myself, is that means that I want those to be full through on the template. The green typically tells me, and this is just a consistent thing I've used throughout, the green tells me I want to go about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little deeper at times. I'll kind of remember that. The blue tells me I want to go almost all the way through. So if it's a 1/2 inch template, then I want to go just a little bit shy of a 1/2 inch deep. If it's a 3/4 inch thick template, then I want to go to almost 3/4. So anyhow, you go. It doesn't make any difference what angle I'm at or anything else, but basically what I need to do right now to go Vcarve is I need to do a file, save as, and then for at least my Vcarve, it will not accept a SketchUp model that's of the later versions. I have to click down on the drop down here, and it wanted to save it as this, which should probably be like a 2021 SketchUp Pro, but I need to go down. I go down to SketchUp version 2017, then I know I'm okay. So right now I've got 2017, I've got my file name, and then I usually, for something like this, I might even add just a little CNC thing behind it. I'm going to do a save. Now that that's saved, I can go to Vcarve. So I've got just a Vcarve, no file in there. I'm going to create a new file. And the last time I used this, it was set up for a width of 5.5. It was set up for a height of 24, and it was set up for a thickness of 0.5, which works out great for this template. It's a 1/2 inch MDF is what I'm going to use. And then if you're going to be doing this, you can hit pause and see what else I've got here. I don't even know my own settings in most cases, but I'm going to say OK. Then the next thing I'm going to do is go up here to this icon, import vectors, click on that. And then I can see that file that I just saved. It's 6:26 in the morning right now. I'm going to click on that one, say open. Now when I do that, it's going to gyrate for a little bit. This again, you might want to pause and just see what the settings are here, because it does whatever I have set there, it works. And I'm going to say OK. And then it's almost always offset like that. I don't know why, it just is. So again, I don't know Vcarve very well at all. I don't even know how to draw in it. I just use it to set up the toolpaths. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over this one right here, which is align selected objects. Because remember, when I came in, everything is selected right now. You can see all the dotted lines. I didn't click anywhere else. If I did, then this wouldn't work because it's align selected objects. So I'm going to click on that. And then if I go up to this one here, it's going to align them to the material. And the center one is the center. So now you can see it moved everything over to the center, and then I can just close out of that. So again, those are all my other settings. All right, so now I'm ready to go. Now it's viewing the entire 24-inch high thing. In almost all cases, especially on larger pieces, I start right here. I start with the center piece, which is that center pin right there. And then that way, when I run this on the CNC, that's the very first thing that the CNC router is going to do is make that 1/4 inch hole. That 1/4 inch hole is located in the exact center of the board, both from height and width. And then that way, if something happens during the run, or if I need to put the board back in, then I can always use that as the reference for this particular board. A lot of times it doesn't make any difference if you're a little off center, because all of my bearings, everything that I do is based off of center. It's not based off of an edge. And then I rarely use the edge to line up to the board that this template, for instance, is going to go up to, because again, that's inconsistent. Instead, I use these pins. You'll see how those get done later. But so that particular one is where I'm going to start. I'm going to use the pocket toolpath. It was set up at 0.375, obviously before was the last time I did something. So, but this is 1/2 inch wood, so I'm going to go with 1/2 inch MDF. So I'm going to do it at 0.5. Okay, so I have my setting at cut depth of 0.5. Because it's a 1/4 inch hole, and because it's a 1/4 inch bit, I don't need 4 passes. It's just going to go straight through anyhow. So I'm going to drop it down. Kind of a comfortable thing with MDF. If it was hardwood, I might stay at 3, but with MDF, I can go down to 2. So I'm going to do 2 passes. I have an auto hide, by the way, so sometimes that thing's going to disappear on us temporarily. And then this one I'm going to call center pin. So I'm down here at the bottom right, center pin. And then I use the at sign, and then 0.50. And all this is really doing, it's not doing anything to the toolpath other than it's reminding me that I wanted to go 0.5 with that. So if I come back later and look at this, then I know what I intended it to do. So I'm going to hit calculate. And then it's going to jump automatically over to the 3D view. I don't need that right now. I'm going to go back to 2D view. And again, this is getting pretty small. So now I want to start doing my other holes. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to select the Zoom 2D. And then for this, I'm just going to go like about half of the board there. Now that's a lot easier to see. And then I can use the scroll bar to move up and down when I want to. So I need to decide where I want to start. Basically what kind of group. So I'm going to go with, these are all 3/8 inch holes. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to shift click on that. So now I have those 3/8 inch holes selected. I still have the shift key held down. So on those, since they're right in a row, I can drag them. And again, these other ones are still selected, right? Now I'm going to leave go of the shift key because I need to scroll down. I'm using the scroll bar to do that. I'm getting clear again. So then I'm going to hold down the shift key, select those. I can't use the shift key here and drag because I accidentally select this one. So I'm just going to individually click those. Then so just to double check, I've let go of the shift key now with my left hand. And just to double check, I've got those all selected. These are all still selected, so I'm good to go. So as long as I don't click anywhere else, I can go ahead and set the toolpath for those. I'm going to click on close on that. And those I do want to go full through, so I'm going to use a pocket toolpath again. I'm already set up at 0.5. And then this one, though, I do want 4 passes because it's a 3/8 inch hole. It's a 1/4 inch bit. It's got to go down and around, down and around, down and around. And I don't want to beat up the bit, don't want to beat up the router, and I want a clean hole. So I'm going to leave that at 4 passes. Then I go back down to name it. And then those would be 3/8 inch pegs at 0.50. And so I have my name on it. I can hit calculate. And again, excuse me, it jumps over to the 3D view. I'm comfortable. I don't need to do a run right now, a sample run. So now I've still got those selected. Now to clean things up, I'm just going to click anywhere. So I clicked there. The other thing I'm going to do is, you can see over here it still has those selected, so I'm just going to deselect that. That way I'm not confused with what I've got selected in one and not the other. Now I usually start at the top and then work my way down every single time. So I'm going to do that again. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these guys here. Again, because this is, I wasn't able to gather that in the range, that's exactly what I wanted. Now I'm going to hold the shift key down and I selected that range. Again, I've got these other 4 up here. I now have this. I'm going to click on that one individually. I have a group. These are all 1/4 inch holes. I have another one here. I have another one here. I have another one here. I remember I already did the center pin, so now I'm going to leave go of the shift key with my left finger, and I'm going to use the scroll bar to scroll down to the bottom half. I'm going to put my left finger on shift, so that shift key is held down. Now when I drag here, I'm continuing to select. I'm going to click on that one, select, click, select. And then as long as I stay low here to avoid that 3/8 inch hole, I selected that. So again, all of these 1/4 inch ones are all selected. Again, I don't want this center pin because I already did him earlier. That was my center pin. So now I want to set the toolpath for those guys. Again, I go back to the pocket toolpath. Again, I want it 0.5. Now passes, just to save time. And again, these are all 1/4 inch holes with a 1/4 inch up spiral fully carbide bit, so I'm comfortable converting that to 2 passes on each of those. So I converted it to 2. I say okay. Again, it did the auto hide on me. I don't know, jury's out on that one. I'm going to say pocket, or I'm going to name these, and this would be all 1/4 inch holes at 0.5. So I can hit calculate. Again, it automatically jumps over and shows the path that it's going to take for that. Then I go back here again. Again, I'm going to click somewhere else. So unclicked all those. And if you look really closely, you can see there's a little dot in the middle of each one, which tells me that those are still being selected over here on the toolpath. I want to unselect that. So again, I go back to my drawing. And I remember that I got these already. I already got all these quarters. And so now I can just scroll down. And now we're going to get at some of the larger ones. So let's just start here. And this one is going to be for a piece of plywood that gets put in there, a 1/4 inch piece of plywood. And that's how the template is attached to the board that it's going to work on. So if I jump over to SketchUp right now, and then I go over to how the templates are used. So right here, these templates, if we look underneath, if you can see kind of close, like I don't show the plywood in there because this is a 2D template. Right in here, that's going to butt up to the edge. Again, I don't like using this edge here, the actual edge of the board, to use for the guide, because that can be inconsistent depending on how accurate you were putting the template on the CNC bit. I'd rather just go so that everything is referenced off of something. And so in this case, in all cases, it's going to be referenced off of this piece of plywood that gets put in there, so which makes all the rest of these very, very accurate. So you can see here, this is where some of the holes are starting to come into play. Like on this one here, I'm going to butt it up to the back end. I'm going to flip it 180. I'm going to butt it up to the front end. And then there's certain holes that are going to be punched into that board when we use it. Now this board here, this one is a little shorter. So this is 24 inches, same size as the template. This one here is only 22 inches. So there's these 3/8 holes here, which are going to get 3/8 inch pegs when we use the template. And then that'll help align. So I'll have alignment in the front, and I'll have a bump on each side. That'll give me a perfect alignment on that board for me to run either routers to mortise those, or to create dimples that we're going to use a manual tool on. And then the last one here, same template again. is I'm going to bump it up here, the blue, which will be that 1/4 inch plywood. But here there's a different set of 3/8 inch holes where there's 3/8 pegs. And then I'm going to be doing this mortise right here, actually is what happens. Whereas on this one, it gets a mortise here, and we don't use this when we actually do the router. So let's go back to Vcarve. And again, what I'm doing here is I want this one, I'm going to put a piece of plywood in there. That is going to be the guide, and I want to glue that in because that one's not going to come out later. So what I want to do on that one, I'm going to go to my toolpath. I'm going to select on that one, but this one I don't want to go to 0.5. This one I want to go to 0.375 because I don't want that plywood to come through the top. And by the way, we're looking at the bottom of the template. We're always looking at the bottom of the template. So this will be the top when we put it on the bed, the CNC bed. But when we're actually using the template, we're going to turn it upside down, and this is what's going to go up to the board that we're going to use it on. So from here, I want it to go up in 0.375. That'll allow me to put the plywood in there, put some glue in there, and then that way it's always going to stay and be consistent. I want to stay with it. It automatically defaulted to 3 passes, which is basically 1/8 of an inch per pass. You can see it's 0.375, and so I set my basic settings that it always tries to go for 1/8 inch per pass. That's the default. So now I'm going to go down here and I'm going to name it ply. Or I'm going to name it, ply guide at, I'll call it slot, that helps even more, slot at 0.375. So that reminds me that that's 0.375. I'm going to hit calculate, and then it automatically jumps over to that. Again, I go back to 2D view, and you can see it's been selected here right now, so I'm just going to click somewhere else. It's still out there. And again, I don't want that to interfere, so this is just my way of doing it. You don't have to do that, obviously. But, so I'm done with that one. Now, I'm going to get in here, and as long as I can see everything like I want to, then I'm okay with that. But I'm going to probably zoom in a little further. I'm just going to pick on those. That way I just have even a more accurate one yet. So, the way I do these is there's less than 1/4 of an inch from here to here. If it were greater than 1/4 inch, I couldn't do that. But since I have a 1/4 inch bit, I'm going to start here. So I'm going to click in the inside one. I'm going to hold down the shift key, and I'm going to click the inside one. As the shift key is still down, I'm going to click the inside one. So those 3, which are going to be router templates, I'm going to use a guide bushing on that with a 1/4 inch bit. So those 3 are selected. I'm going to go to my toolpath. I again use pocket toolpath. That's a full through. This is going to be a full through. So I do need to go back up here. It was defaulted to 375 from the last time I used it, and I'm going to change that to 5 again, 0.5. So I have 0.5. I do want to stick with the number of passes. Now, larger openings, a lot of times, you use the tab method. I don't like doing that when I'm making a router template, because if there's a tiny little bump left over from the tab, then the router guide bushing tends to bump into that, and then you just get a less accurate. So I just bite the bullet since they're not too large, and I just go ahead and eat out the whole thing. So this one, the name of it is going to be a router oval. That's good enough. And then this is the inner part. So I'm going to type inner at 0.5. So that hits calculate. Again, it automatically jumps over, shows me what it's going to do. Again, I go back to 2D view. Again, I click somewhere else. Again, I go down here and turn that off for right now, because I remember where I'm at. Again, because this is less than 1/4 inch from here to here, now I'm going to use a different method. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to shift click on that, shift click on that. So now I have the 3 outers selected. I'm going to go to my toolpaths. Oops. And then this time though, I'm going to use this one, which is the profile toolpath, which is going to set up, normally I use that for setting up tabs. This one I'm not doing it for that reason. I'm just basically saying, hey, I don't need to router out the middle because it's basically already gone. It's gone because of that previous one did it first. And again, you do have to be really careful that you don't accidentally change the order of these two, because if you did and you tried to do what I'm going to do right now, it would end up putting a lot of pressure on the router. So basically this one already, because I had done some other stuff, came out to 0.25, and that's what I want to do right now. You'll see how this works with the router. Basically it's a dust port. So when the router goes through and it routes out this, there's some place for that dust to go so that the guide bushing doesn't bump up against grungy router sawdust, because that will affect then, if the router guide bushing bumps up against sawdust inside this cavity, then it's not going to route out everything that I needed to route out. So I need some place for that dust to go, so I create this cavity. Plus the router I use has a really good vac or dust collection system on it built right in, and I connect a vac to that. It tells me it wants to do 3 passes. I could do that because it's only doing the outside, but because it's only doing the outside, because it's only doing about 1/8 of an inch, I'm okay dropping those passes down to just 2, and that way it's going to make 1/8 of an inch again per. Just takes a little less time. I'm going to say okay on that. Again, it auto-hided, if that's a word. This one I do have to scroll down to get at my name. And then this one will be the router oval outer at 0.25. I'm going to say calculate. And again, it's showing me what it did there. So now I go back to 2D view, and I'm doing some of this from just memory. I just have to, I remember that I got everything there. I'm going to turn that one off. And now I think I have everything. So I'm going to scroll down, and I remember doing these 3/8. I remember doing all these quarters. It gets a little bit more complicated, obviously, when the more cavities you have, but I remember doing everything. So now I'm going to go to 3D view. I have a blank board because there's nothing selected over here. They're all deselected. So by clicking on this one right here, it selects all of them. Basically tells me what's going to go on. Then I'm going to go up here to preview visible toolpaths, not preview all toolpaths, because sometimes there are some down here that I don't want to include right on one run, but I'll include them on another. So I just want to preview those that I've got clicked. So I'm going to click on preview visible toolpaths, and then it automatically is doing all of what just happened, and it showed me what it's going to make. Now this one visually I just look at, and I go, did I get everything? So I have just a kind of a pattern here of 3 + 1. I have a pattern here of 3 + 1. I have a pattern here of 3, 3, 3, 3. I kind of remember, yes, that's right. And then I have a pattern down here. I just kind of eyeballing, do those patterns look the same? Do I have my slot? Do I have my ovals? I do. So there we go. And then I've got everything there. So I'm going to click on this to open it up. And then it automatically deselects. I don't know why, but it does. All right, so I'm going to select all those again. I'm going to hit close. Then I'm going to go again. I'm just making sure they're all selected. And again, if for some reason you didn't want to run these, and I might even end up doing that, I'll see here in a second. If you didn't want to run certain ones, then you would just deselect those particular ones. But right now, I want to make the entire run. So I'm going to go Save Toolpath. I'm going to click on that, and then again, I'm double checking to make sure they're all selected, and you can slow down. These are files that are already there. So I'm going to save the toolpath. It's going to save it as a .tap, and I'm going to call this jig. Let's see here once. Yeah, I'll just call it jig, and then today's date is fine. So it's Feb 05, and then I usually because I may have to make a change later, I'm going to do -01. All that way, if I change something else today, February 5th, and I make a change and redo it, I'm going to call it .0 or -0.02. So now I have my tap file saved, and then I'm going to save. Could have done this, should have done it earlier. I'm going to save the actual CRV file, so I can call this the same thing. If I want, I can call it something else. Template Feb 1, or no, today's actually Feb 5, so Feb 05-01. Again, I could call it something else, but that works for me. So now I have both the CRV file save and I have the .tap file save. Now, when I run this, never mind. I was thinking about making a different version that I could run where I eliminate, one or two of these, like, especially the stuff that takes a long time to router, like these, where it's just the holes. And I probably will eventually do that, but I'm not going to do it right now. So basically, I'm done. And all I'm going to do yet, you don't want to forget to do this, is I'm going to go down. I'm clicking on my what do you call it, not Internet Explorer, but Windows Explorer, and I'm going to click on Documents. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a USB in the drive. So I stuck a USB thumb drive in the computer on the side, and this is what it popped up. It's called Travel, it's a D drive or whatever. Okay, but there were a couple of files already on there, and one of those was a tap. Well, it was an older version, and I really don't want that. The control pad on the CNC router is not very friendly. It's DOS. Looks like DOS, and so it gets kind of confusing. So because I had used this thumb drive for something else before, and I really don't need those files anymore, I'm going to delete those so that I have a nice clean folder. I'm going to go back up to where I store stuff, and I store it under, I'm just dropping down to the MikroBench. Okay, and then right here you can see I have, today is the 5th of February. At 6:47 I saved a Vcarve file, and I saved a tap file, and here's you got the template, February 5th, and I have the jig. I'm saving that. I only need the tap file on the thumb drive, but I save this just in case something happens. I'm in an area where I don't have any way to back up my files, and so that way, by clicking these three, the actual SketchUp file, the tap file, and this one, I now have, when I transfer those over to the thumb drive, I'm going to be able to have backups on them, at least temporarily. And then I'm going to right click on those three, and I'm going to say copy. So now it copied it into RAM, into memory. I go back down to my travel drive, which is the D drive, the thumb drive. It's empty. I'm going to put my cursor over the top here. I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to say paste. And it now pasted those three files. So I have the Vcarve file, the tap file, and the SketchUp Pro file. And I can now click that, and then you can't see what's going on here because it's below the screen capture screen, but I am clicking on the eject. So I'm going to eject the mini, and it's going to beep at me and say, hey, it's okay to go ahead and eject it. So now I'm going to pull the thumb drive out of the computer, and we're all set to go. Now the next thing I'm going to do is take the thumb drive. I'm going to take it over to the computer, or excuse me, to the CNC machine, and put a board on it, and I'll center it and all that kind of stuff. I'll show you that later. But then that's where we would end up running the CNC program. So there you go. That is the entire setup of, once I brought a SketchUp file into Vcarve, how I went ahead and set up the toolpaths for it. And again, you can see that I didn't have to make any of these circles. I didn't have to move any of these circles. I didn't use any of these functions over here except for those few in the early part when I imported the file. Again, I don't even know how to do it, so I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to stick with this method of using SketchUp and then transferring it over. So there you go.